Somebody at the Krusty Krab needs to be evaluated. Actually, every single one of them does. Because underneath the pineapple, the jellyfishing, the I'm ready, there's a personal file for each of these characters. And if you actually go through it, Bikini Bottom stops looking like a joke. It starts looking like a facility. A mental one. So, 6 employees, 6 files, every single one of them is an externalization of something broken underneath. Not randomly, precisely. For the next 10 minutes, pay close attention because by the end of this, you won't be able to watch a single SpongeBob episode the same way ever again. File 1 is already open. Subject name, SpongeBob SquarePants. Fry cook. Status, relentlessly, suspiciously, fine. On the surface, he is never tired, never discouraged. He cries actual tears when they suspend him from flipping patties. That is not passion. Passion has limits. This does not. Look closer when something goes wrong. He does not shrug it off. He spirals into repetition. He chants the Krabby Patty formula out loud. He redoes the same task over and over until it feels right, even when it was already right. Lose a spatula and his whole identity falls apart. It is like a core routine got ripped out. That is the real signature of obsessive compulsive patterns. Anxiety managed through ritual. The ritual is not optional, it is load-bearing. Now stack another layer. The non-stop cheerfulness never cracks, never dips, never takes a day off. Psychologists call it manic defense. It is a wall of forced happiness, built because what is underneath is too heavy to look at. Here's the giveaway. He truly believes Squidward is his best friend, even though he is told constantly and clearly that he is not. He shows no anger or sadness. Just the same enthusiasm episode after episode, like the rejection never landed. That is literally someone who cannot afford to let the rejection land, because the whole structure might not hold. Honestly, have you ever met a real person that is consistently happy? Neither have I. And the person who shares his kitchen, his shift, his entire daily life runs the exact opposite program. That makes the next one even more interesting. Next subject, Squidward Tentacles. Same building, same hours, completely different file. Flat tone almost all the time. Zero motivation to be near his job. The second the shift ends, he isolates. Blinds closed, home alone, clarinet to nobody. He describes the workplace over and over without exaggeration as something closer to captivity than employment. That is not the typical grumpy neighbor energy. That is the clinical shape of dysthymia. A low-grade, long-running depressive state. A slower, exhausting state that just sits there year after year and quietly drains everything. Most people miss this. He's not untalented. The show goes out of its way to prove it. He can paint, he can play music, he shows real flashes of creative skill, but nothing ever lands. Recognition never comes, so he simply stops trying over and over. Textbook depressive feedback loop. Effort starts to feel pointless, so effort stops. The outcome gets worse. That confirms the belief that effort was pointless to begin with. Watch his body language. Slumped, slow, sighing before anyone even asks him anything. That is what depressive affect actually looks like when you draw it honestly. He's not the villain of the show. Multiple critics and psychology writers have said the same things over the years. He might be the most human character in it. And here is the detail worth holding on to. SpongeBob's mania and Squidward's depression are not placed next to each other by accident. That pairing becomes important later. Keep it in mind. Moving on. Subject 3, Patrick Star. No fixed job, no filter whatsoever. Patrick says whatever enters his head the instant it enters his head right off the bat. No pausing or rethinking of consequences before acting on an impulse. In psychology, that's called disinhibition. A near total absence of impulse control where the gap between I want this and I'm doing this essentially don't exist. Look at the pattern across dozens of episodes. Patrick decides to keep a rock as a pet, and does. He joins a group worshipping a literal rock, and does. He eats objects he shouldn't, agrees to plans that are obviously bad within seconds of hearing them, and never once stops to ask, should I actually do this? There's no visible internal debate happening. The urge and the action arrive at the same time. That constant instant gratification loop is one of the clearest depictions of impulse control dysfunction ever put into children's television, And it works as comedy precisely because nobody in the show treats it as anything other than, that's just Patrick. There's a second layer here too. Patrick shows almost no memory of consequences from episode to episode. Bad outcomes don't update his future behavior. That's consistent with how impulse-driven decision-making tends to work. The reward is immediate, the consequence is delayed, and the brain weighs the immediate thing far more heavily every single time. Next file up is the one that hits closest to home for most adults watching this video right now. Subject name, Eugene Krabs. Business owner, founder, sole employee of his own obsession. Krabs doesn't just like money, he builds his whole emotional and moral framework around it. Look at the receipts. He's sold out his own employees to save a nickel. He's put customers at risk to cut costs on a menu item. He runs schemes just to squeeze few extra coins out of those situations where the coins barely matter. There's even a moment where he briefly chooses money over his daughter Pearl's happiness. It gets fixed in the episode, but the impulse shows up first. This isn't greed as a quirky trait. This is behavioral addiction. The same reward loop as gambling, just dressed up as currency hoarding. The short high of a sale, the crash right after, the urge to chase the next one no matter who it costs. Here's the tell that it sets apart from normal frugality. Frugality has a ceiling, a point where enough arrives and the behavior settles. Krabs doesn't have that. Nowhere in the whole show does he look at his savings and say, "That's enough, I can stop." The chase has no finish line, only the next hit. Watch his eyes in almost any money episode. They turn into dollar signs. The show puts the addiction right on his face, and it's been doing it since season 1. And the next belongs to the character everyone assumes is the healthy one in this building, but she isn't. Subject name, Sandy Cheeks. Scientist, athlete, the competent one. Or so it looks. Sandy is strong, brilliant, capable, and constantly, loudly performing all three. Unprompted karate demos, strength tests nobody asked for, loud Texas pride repeated so often that it starts to sound less like identity and more like a reminder to herself. That pattern has a name, overcompensation. A defense where a perceived weakness gets buried under oversized displays of strength so nobody looks underneath. Now, look at what's underneath. She's a land mammal living permanently underwater, sealed in an air suit, cut off from her own species, with no real support system that shares her biology or background. Across the entire show, she almost never mentions missing home, missing land, or anyone from Texas by name. That silence is the symptom. Someone truly fine with total isolation from their own kind doesn't need to prove toughness this often, this loudly, to people who never asked. The performance is the cover. The homesickness is what's being covered. Hold on to that. It connects directly to the final and strangest file in the building, the one everyone remembers but almost nobody actually analyzes. Last subject, Sheldon J. Plankton. Competitor, restaurant owner, fixated. One goal, every single episode for decades, steal the Krabby Patty formula. Might seem like ambition, but ambition adapts when a plan keeps failing. Plankton doesn't. He runs the exact same failed plan with cosmetic changes over and over, no matter how many times it collapses the same way. That's fixation. One idea taking up so much mental space that flexible thinking gets crowded out. No real plan B, only plan A redecorated. Add the outsized ego next to his microscopic size and you get something close to a Napoleon complex, compensatory grandiosity, usually tied to a sense of physical inadequacy that gets overcorrected into oversized ambition. But here's what sets Plankton apart from a straight villain. He's not written as evil, he's written as stuck. The show keeps insisting on that. Every time he loses, he doesn't stay defeated. He immediately starts planning again, like the loop resets itself before the next episode even starts. Then there's Karen, his computer wife. Most scenes she points out, correctly, every time, that the plan will fail. He hears it, he does it anyway. The information is right there, said to his face, and the compulsion overrides it anyways. And that's all of it. 6 employees, 6 files, every single one of them has been sitting in plain sight since the first episode, disguised as jokes. Here's the real question this leaves you with. If a 20-minute kids cartoon can accidentally build this many recognizable psychological patterns without ever trying to diagnose anyone, what does that say about shows that try to do exactly this on purpose and still fail? Drop your answer in the comments, and be honest. Which file did you see a little bit of yourself in? If this kind of breakdown is your thing, subscribe to Cartoon Nexus, because this channel does exactly this for cartoons nobody else is willing to look at this closely. The next file is already open. We'll see you in the next one.